welcome to another edition of Driving Perilously, the show where we turn on the radio and talk about what we find, what we hear. Let's see. It is Wednesday. Hot. Wednesday, sunny South Florida. That was Sandy Patty on the CD, Another Time, Another Place. I like this guy's voice. I don't know who it is. Huh. Is that 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010? Last year? I don't know. It's an interesting concept. When I was in junior high school, I had seen Grease, the movie, the most successful musical of all time, movie musical of all time, maybe. So Olivia Newton-John said when she guest starred in Grease and played herself as a nasty person instead of as Olivia Newton-John. So I had seen Grease and I had an idea of what the 50s were like because of my parents' teenage years and other representations. But it was, crystallized in Grease. You could tell that Grease was a 70s interpretation of the 50s. And I knew that by 7th grade, if not before. And it was easy to have a conception of the 60s, which was conflated or which was overshadowed by the hippie movement, the free love movements and the peace movements, which didn't start until the end of the 60s, but it was easy to call that the 60s. And then the 70s, which I remember. So 50s, 60s, and 70s seemed rather defined. And then the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, well, it's blurrier, right? And then we've got the decade of the 2010s, which is completely behind us. And what was happening then? It was so easy to encapsulate in our language the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and then even the 90s. But then what is the next one? Right? You can't say it, so you can't group things around that thought because you don't have a catchword for it, catchphrase for it. And that leads me to think that, of course, trends always change. Language always changes. People get older. Without exception, time marches forward. So it's nice to be able to get a handle on the past in 10-year increments. But we could pick any 10-year increment and see differences. Like we can pick any 100-year increment and see differences, but we always see similarities. So anyway, that song was by an artist, a gentleman who I don't know who it is, and it's in a retro style, so it could be from many different decades. So Kansas City, the popular version was by Marty Robbins, I think. Wish I could Google it right now. And I like that lady's voice. I've heard her before. I can't place her name. When I went to Kansas City, which might have been in the 2000s, I don't know, I was shocked at how big their downtown was. Growing up in West Palm Beach, we have a downtown. And by that I mean one-way streets and tall buildings and people rushing to work, crossing the streets and the crosswalks. And to me, that's what downtown is. And that certain dirty smell that reminds me of pigeons. And then in Orlando, there's a similar thing. But they're kind of small compared to Kansas City, compared to Miami, compared to Cairo, compared to New York, compared to Chicago. So, what I was struck by in Kansas City is just street after street after street of skyscrapers. You know, Kansas and Missouri and those middle states that were once considered Western states, they're still considered that in our American consciousness. We've got the eastern states that are as big as counties. Then we've got the huge square and rectangular shapes that are huge out west. And Kansas is the furthest away from any ocean. So it's the center of the U.S. Kansas City seems like it'd be in the middle of nowhere, but that's just wrong. You're gonna have a big city to be the center of all that land, right? And compared to West Palm Beach or Orlando, it's gonna be big. What I don't understand is that in Florida the city's spread out because we've got land, as opposed to New York. But why didn't they do that in Kansas City? I don't know. I don't know anything about Kansas City, except they have barbecue. From this angle, it was very interesting today.
Or is it coming up later?
No, I have a story now. And I thought you could let
Okay, so this is Angela Manfredi on Legends 100.3. I'm going to see what she's talking about.
So let's keep it above board.
She's talking about the cruise?
Possible, Mr. Johnny Carson. It's our real story. So this is where you say to yourself, and you decide what you want to say, what kind of really it is. Maybe it's
they're getting ready for a cruise, Legends 100.3, which you can find around the world and on the Legends app for the Great American Songbook.
Skinny Dip for this Sunday, July 10th at Blind Creek Beach on
Come on,
Hutchinson
Angela.
Island
They're
in
always
Fort
hawking
Pierce.
something. Stop selling something.
Okay, thank you. That's all you got. That's all you got.
Well, skinny dipping, there's one word that I gotta say about skinny dipping.
Yes.
Shrinkage.
Okay, and so it's happening.
Okay. Is that what I want to listen to? Not really.
The world record. So last year's record was 431 people simultaneously skinny dipping on this beach. They're going to try to break the record this Sunday.
How
and
cute.
This Blind Creek.
Next. Okay, there we go. The Eurythmics. Eurythmics. One of those two-member bands that has a singer and somebody else. So the singer grabs all of the attention. Maybe somebody else does most of the work. I don't know. Maybe not. Annie Lennox, the short red hair, which made her look like a man. Shocking. Named after something that's kind of like calisthenics, or aerobics, which is synchronized movement, but synchronized movement to music. Eurythmics, good rhythm. This is so interesting. Can't imagine anyone else would find it interesting. Alright, next.
Things you just don't question. Like in your life, I see my future in an instant.
Show why there is nothing in the world to fear. The water release. To do that, I have to get full protective gear into the world's biggest facility for removing radioactive particles from water.
I'm inside now a huge
The world's biggest facility for removing radioactivity from water. So I was listening to this conspiracy theory video about radioactivity, and it was a lecture. It seemed this man had made it his life's work to show that radioactivity wasn't dangerous, that it's a lie. I don't know what his deal was. I don't know what his deal is, but he was saying that at his job, which was a nuclear reactor or something, they would just go swimming in the water and it was fine, and radioactivity doesn't hurt people at all. And I'm thinking, how would you hide that one? I understand that the governments in the world that have nuclear bombs would want to hold up that belief, right? So people can think they have nuclear bombs rather than there are no such thing. But the fallouts from 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl, they're just fake. At this point, anything could be fake, but that's a good one. I was listening to somebody at work and they said they've gotten to where they just don't trust anybody. If you tell them there's mermaids, they say, yep, there might be. And I saw a video yesterday claiming to be footage of a mermaid. I think it's so stupid when people are trying to show how much better we are today than in the past, and they pick some random myth or some random mythic creature and they say, explorers saw manatees and they thought they were mermaids. Well, yeah, maybe. But the explorers didn't see what they thought were manatees. The explorers saw what they thought were mermaids. And sure, 1 or 2 or 10 or all of them could have been manatees. But you don't have any explorer thinking they saw a mermaid who realized it was a manatee. You have people looking back at the past, coming up with a nice solution for something they can't believe in. But that's been repeated over and over and over. The myth of mermaids is because of manatees. Well, yeah, maybe. Alright, so that was all over the place. We've got a 15-minute video. One of our longest, maybe the longest, for this edition of Driving Perilously. So, I hope you have a wonderful day. Here we are at 9:30.